We just wanted to get a little video input from you both about what it's like to attend conference for the first time and also traveling with your child and all of their medical equipment and how you do it and tips and tricks and what would you recommend? I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that you think it is worth it to do it because you're both veteran conference attendees and you've both been more than once, so you've come back. And so I guess, what did you think that first time and what drew you back in? But let's go ahead and start. And Lorelei, I'll start with you because you're our more veteran mom here. What made you attend for the first time and how did you kind of get up the gumption to do it? Although I know specifically your first time, it was pretty much in your neck of the woods, so there wasn't a lot of travel involved, but you have since traveled far and wide with Isaac.
Thank you. We had planned on actually trying to attend the conference before our first conference, but weren't able to because of medical reasons. We first attended because we'd already connected in the Facebook community, and I'd only met one other family to date with a child with Tay-Sachs. And so I had an idea that meeting other families and going to a session that talked about our kids when everybody local didn't really know what the trajectory could be for medical care would be really beneficial to us. So then when it came the next year to okay, let's go, it actually was in our backyard. After that, we just kept going because we learn something every year. We get to hug our old friends and make new friends. Usually Isaac gets to see everybody. So it's really good for the connection and for learning more. And of course, I attend the research session every year.
And Kim, how about for you? I mean, you and Adam took a big leap to attend with Grayson and travel. And so what kind of led you to make that decision and how did you prepare for that?
So our first conference was the virtual conference, but that was days after we got our diagnosis. So we were lucky that year that it was virtual. But then the virtual, I wasn't sure I wanted to attend because it was so fresh. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to talk about it. I was trying to just push it off. And Adam actually was like, no, we should try it. It's no harm in trying. So we did. And it was honestly life-changing to have people who truly understood what we were going through. And then the next year with it being in Denver, we knew we had to go. And I wanted these people who had helped me so much to meet Grayson. We wanted people who understood to hold him and to snuggle him and meet him and hear his noises and his giggles, that it was just something we wanted to make sure that we shared him with our community.
Mm-hmm. Lorelei, I'll throw it back to you first. What did you do to prepare? It's a lot to travel with a medically fragile child. And I mean, just the traveling itself is hard on anybody, let alone someone who's compromised. And then when you have extra equipment and you're dealing with positioning and medications and going through TSA, what did you do to sort of help tackle all of those things as best you could ahead of time to make traveling more smoothly?
Yes, traveling is definitely one of the stressors. In the beginning, we made a pretty good list before, in the weeks before, we looked at what was our everyday and we said, okay, the conference is 4 days. We're going for 5. Let's take 7 feeding bags. Let's take an extra G-tube kit just in case something happens to his G-tube. Let's take so at least 1 to 2 extra of everything that he uses on a day-to-day basis. And then, some of the backup things. The airlines don't charge you necessarily for a medical bag. So we weren't concerned about oh no, if we have this extra bag full of his medical stuff, we're going to be paying extra for it. They don't, if you tell them when you're checking in, it's medical, then they don't. We also brought more bags on board because they tell you, don't check anything that you absolutely must have. We did call TSA Cares and set up the, at least let the agents know. Some airports, they meet you there. Some like the heads up. Some are actually you have an advocate that walks through with you every time. for us, especially as we got so used to going through, we knew already, okay, our bag that has all of his blended food or his formulas or his, sterile waters, like we put all of those things in one bag so that when it scanned through and they said, oh, this one's flagged, we're like, yep, go ahead and take it off to the side and look at it. I know, like, it wasn't necessarily in our case, but some palliative care and hospice programs can send ahead some of your supplies or your oxygen. For us, our company that does our oxygen in home was able to give us a rental that would like traveled well. So I think preparing, like starting to look at it weeks ahead and packing some things more than a week ahead and deciding if you can ship ahead and having a friend or at least having two adults to we always joke about being Isaac's roadies. So having those extra hands.
I think that's great. Preparedness, so important. Making those calls, making those connections, getting everything all lined out. I know some people get notes from their doctor about medications or food or just traveling with the diagnosis. Kim, what have you found to be some of the most impactful to be able to travel?
Yeah, a lot of the same things, just getting things ahead of schedule. We did get a letter from Grayson's doctor that we had in a binder that I had in my carry-on of what medications he needed, why he needed them, the amount that we were bringing with us. We brought all the prescriptions just in case. We called TSA Cares too and let them know this is what we're coming with. And same thing with Lorelei, like they didn't charge us for any of that extra baggage. So I packed extra things just in case while we were there. I am connecting with other parents that maybe were closer and they brought extra things too. And then Grayson was enrolled in hospice when we did come, and we did have our hospice connect with the Denver hospice. And they had everything at the hotel waiting for us when we got there. So they had the oxygen, they had a shake vest, they had extra tubes and diapers and wipes and everything there. So when we got to the room, it was all set up, ready to go. So we just brought things that we knew he would need on the plane, or like his food pump and things, of course I brought diapers and stuff too, just in case, but just kind of making sure that everything's set up ahead of time. It definitely alleviates the stress. And like Lorelei said, having Adam there too, where I would hold Gray while we got his car seat in the plane, and then I'd bring Gray in. And like most of the people on the plane were very understanding that it's going to take us a minute. So we would board first and get off last. So that way we didn't interrupt anybody else's travel or connecting flights. But everyone was very patient with us and just kind of making sure everyone knew what was going on and why we were taking extra luggage and why we had this wheelchair and all this other things. But everybody at the airports were all very helpful.
Oh, good. I can imagine the peace of mind that must have offered by knowing that you were going to have those things in place with the hospice when you got to your destination as well. Must have been very, very helpful.
We were kind of questioning about going, and then our hospice team said, hey, we can actually connect with a hospice there, have everything, and then you have a team too. So if something did happen with Gray while we were there, we could have nurses on call 24/7. So that was great to have as a peace of mind too.
That's great. So your hospice took care of everything. You didn't have to make any of. That's wonderful. Wow.
Nope. And they got us, so we had an assigned nurse while we were in Denver. So I got her phone number and she connected with me and she said, I see you're checking in there. Is it okay if I go to your room early to set everything up? And I was like, yes, that would be great. And then she stayed in contact with me the whole conference to make sure Gray was doing okay and if we needed anything else. And they had food there for him and everything. So
amazing.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. So when you both got to the conference, Lorelei, what did you think? I mean, how was it when you finally were meeting, other parents face to face? And I guess where were you at with what your expectation was that you were coming for, and then what you left with at the end of it?
Oh, thinking back over the years, I don't know, every year, we arrive to the hotel and we pretty much, I mean, we run into people sometimes even still in the airport, and the hugs start right away. So then as we're checking in for the conference itself at the welcome table, we see our old friends, and then we start to see some new people. The conference schedule has evolved over the years, so it's always interesting to look forward to like what sessions are coming up. We do our best to attend all of them because I find all of them very helpful. The room for our affected kids, it depends on, a variety of factors, but usually Isaac's on the like more active side of the affected kids because he does like some activities, but of course he's not up and running around. So it's nice to have people who have experience with Isaac, like involved in like music therapy with him or art therapy. And then, but usually I wind up bringing him to a lot of the sessions as well. And he's a little bit of an icebreaker too, because we meet other people and they're like, oh, tell me, who haven't been maybe before, tell me more about Isaac. And so I'm always happy to share new things about Isaac, and learn more about their kids too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the really wonderful aspects. Kim, how about for you?
I was super against that first conference. Again, it was so fresh and it was so scary. And then it was like just this breath of fresh air of having people. I didn't have to explain anything. People just got it and they understood how I felt. I didn't feel judged for crying, and I didn't feel like they were looking at me like, oh, poor you, and your poor son. It was like, oh, tell me about Grayson, and like, what does Grayson like? And it was, I believe it was Todd McDonald, or Holly's husband. And he said, like, isn't it cool to like go to a place and have your kid be the rock star? Like everyone wants to see Gray, and they wanted to touch his feet and his cheeks and his chubby thighs. And like, he was right. Like, it was a very cool experience where, if you take him in public around the area, people are kind of looking at him like, oh, what's wrong with him? Whereas at the conference, everyone's like, oh my gosh, and so excited to see him. And we talk about things that are so much deeper than, well, what do you do for a living? Or, like, oh, the weather today. Like, you make family, not just friends. And even though Grayson has passed now, we still have his Camp Snuggle decorations and activities that he made up on our wall in our bedroom. And they're irreplaceable memories and just things that we have of him, but also from the conference. We've got some paintings that Lily and Maddie made for us, and some other things from Caden and things too. So it's always nice to have a little part of your NTSAD family when you go home after the conference too.
Yeah, I love that so much because for me, I feel like it's that supportive bubble
Yes.
that, in some ways we miss in the rest of our life, because you're right, when you're there with everyone else, it brings a sense of normalcy and connectedness where we're all, in it together, and we all understand what each other's going through because we're all walking through it. So yeah, I connect with that as well. So one of the great things that I think is, you both came in as new moms, obviously, and first time attendees at some point, and you're there to learn and, connect. And, but then over the years, what you've done now is you've both given back for the new families that we have today. And now you're veteran families, and you keep returning because not only does it provide that connection to you, but I think it's so that you can be there to support the you that you once were, in these new families. And I think that that's one of the really lovely things about our group. So any final comments, any closing thoughts that you would like anyone to know who's maybe on the fence about attending or has questions? Lorelei, what would you want to tell anybody who may be considering attending for their first time?
I would say that it's worth it. Like you do all the preparing and it feels like, oh, a lot of energy is going into it, but the energy you get back is amazing. And there's a lot of steps that we can take to keep our kids generally healthy. I learned over the years, one of the tricks I'd learned even pre-pandemic was actually from the McDonald's also, was Cora had started wearing a, at the time it was like this, like almost like an N95 cloth mask from England. Like this was, like I said, pre-pandemic. And so for traveling, like in the airports and things, we brought like, the Clorox wipes to wipe down, our area on the airplane, and we, wore a mask, and we didn't care if anybody was looking at him, because we're like, it's really more important to us that we get to go to this conference and keep him healthy. And so there were many years that we, taking decent precautions that we're all much more versed in now, kept him like healthy throughout his whole trip. I really do think the airports and going through all of, the plane and all that was more of a risk than, many of the other places.
Absolutely. And Kim, what would you want to say to the you of today who's out there and is like, oh, I don't know, I don't know that this conference is for me? Because I'll say that was me as well, my first conference. And like I mentioned before, I'm so glad I went because it absolutely changed my life. So what would you tell someone in that line of thinking?
Just come. I promise you, like Lorelei said, it's so much energy going and planning and getting everything, and you're terrified and you're nervous, but the people that you will meet will literally change your life. We would not be where we are today without our NTSAD family. And the conference is something that we look forward to every year. And as long as we can, I will never miss one ever. And I was that person who didn't want to participate. I didn't want people looking at me and watching me cry. And it's the one place you go and you cry, and everyone's there with you and supporting you. And it's worth every ounce of energy. Like Lorelei said, you get it back tenfold. You meet people who feel the same way, or maybe they give you a different perspective on what you're going through, or a different way of looking at things. We learned so many different things to take care of Gray while we had him. And now that we're on the other side and we're, bereaved, we've learned different ways of handling our grief that we might not have had before. And it's changed our lives 100%.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more with all of it.